Together with American songwriter, we had the opportunity to talk to BRIAN VANDER ARK from the Verve Pipe.
Adam was able to talk to Brian over Zoom audio. I'm really excited because the Verve Pipe are currently working on a new record, so stay tuned.
Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and Facebook page at Bringing It Backwards, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bringing Back Pod.
We'd appreciate your support if you follow and subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're Bringing It Backwards with BRIAN VANDER ARK of the Verve Pipe.
Hello.
Hey, man, how are you?
Doing well. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, so our podcast is about your journey in the music industry and how you got to where you are today with the Verve Pipe and all of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot about that subject, so
That's good. So, Brian, tell me, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A little conservative Grand Rapids, Michigan, West Michigan area. So it was easy to be a rebel here for sure.
Oh, okay. How did you originally get into music?
I got a job at the Holiday Inn bars. I played, I was 16. My parents brought me to a Holiday Inn. There was a guy playing a guitar in a tip jar, and I was a huge Harry Chapin, James Taylor fan, that kind of thing. And he was playing all those songs. I was like, I could do that. And I auditioned and got the gig. And so I would play, that was my high school job, was playing music for the old drunks, in the bar.
Whoa.
Yeah, so the payment was like, somebody would say, play Cat Stevens, I'll give you $1. And so I'd play Cat Stevens for $1, that kind of thing. I had a guy once ask me to play Cats in the Cradle, and and I played it for him. He said he'd give me $5. I played it for him, and then he came up afterwards, he had tears in his eyes, like, Brian, you got to play it again. I'll give you $5 more. And then so I played it again, and then he came up again, and I ended up playing it 5 times in a row for this guy at $5 a piece. And then the only reason I didn't play it the 6th time is because the other guy in the bar paid me $20 to not play it again. So I had a pretty good racket going on.
That was a good night.
That's a true story, by the way. It was like a $35 night or some shit.
That's so funny.
Cool. But that's how I got my start. And I was writing songs back then, and so I'd play mostly cover songs, and then, I would throw in an original here and there. It's just terrible originals, But but I was trying to write, back then.
When did you pick up the guitar? Like, how old were you when you learned?
I think a 3rd grade Christmas present was the guitar. My older brother played. He was 5 years older. He played in bands too in high school and that kind of thing. So I kind of followed his lead. Back then, he gave me lessons when I was a little kid and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
yeah, I took it seriously when when I really started gravitating towards it was junior high school and then high school. There were big years for me for playing. But I always wanted to write. I was always a storyteller. It's a polite way of saying that I would lie all the time when I was a kid, I guess. my parents said I was quite the storyteller. It was apropos that I went into what I did. So, as a songwriter, the lyrics were always very important to me, but they're usually made up stories,
Wow. What was you said it really started grabbing your interest in middle school, high school. When did you start forming bands? Was it around that age as well?
Yeah, the first band I was in was we had a band called Haven, because we were in Grand Haven at that point. And so we thought Haven would be the coolest logo on a T-shirt or a bumper sticker. Bumper stickers were popular back then.
That's a cool name, actually.
It's a great name, I know. But the thing is that, we rehearsed maybe a couple times, and so the band was more, our meetings were about, we got to do this design and this, so we get poster boards and make posters and stuff for gigs that never happened. I said it was like conceptually this amazing, young person's rock and roll band that we never actually ever played a gig. In fact, my mom made me leave the band because of my poor grades in algebra. I think I failed algebra, and she said, "That's it for Haven." And then, and also because we didn't play Christian music. I think if we played Christian music, she would have let me slide on the algebra and let me stay in Haven. But we were, we were trying to play Van Halen and that kind of thing.
So Haven didn't work out. Did you get your grade up in algebra?
No. Listen, you're either good at math or you're not good at math. I wasn't good at math back then. I mean, I'm good at math now because I have to run the business, so I can. My kids think I'm my third grader thinks I'm a whiz at math. My freshman in high school thinks I'm a joke when it comes to math. But,
that's funny.
The funny thing is about music, though, real quick, is that, music is so mathematical. If you read music, it's all math. I mean,
oh, yeah.
And the funny thing is that I don't read music either, though. So, playing by ear, it's like conceptually, I can see and hear the music and where it should go and know these things without knowing the math of music. And there are people that are really into and can only read music and play music if they read it. Mm-hmm. And then there's this whole group of people like myself who are the exact opposite. And sometimes you get two of those people in a band and it's like oil and water, terrible. Which is what happened in our band. I mean, that's a story for later in the story. But when you're playing with guys who are fantastic musicians, but you don't know what a ninth is. Like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I know that it sounds good, but, that kind of thing. Anyway, I kind of went off on a math and music tangent there.
No, but it makes sense. Yeah, because there are people. What's funny is there are a lot of musicians in your same position where you're very successful. You've had these really successful bands, and you just you don't know how to read the music, which is fine. You know what I mean?
But it would ruin it. I think it would ruin it if I started to think of things in a musical way in accordance to math, structure, and what is supposed to sound good. That would be an argument. That's always an argument, and that was always an argument in our band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it doesn't make musical sense. And I'd say, well, it sounds good. Yeah, but it doesn't make musical sense. And you'd have that argument over and over and over, but you go, listen to how it sounds, and that's always been the most important thing to me, of course, because that's what the public hears,
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I would think is if you were playing something and someone with that background and knowledge of notes and theory and all that is like, oh, it's not supposed to go that way. But you're like, but it sounds good that way. That's why it's going to go that way.
That's all that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So from Haven, what was the next band you started, or is that when you kind of got the gig with, that
was a Holiday Inn gig. So I stayed at the Holiday Inn gig, and I played various Holiday Inns, and then I joined the Army, and I was in the Army for 4 years.
Oh, really?
And then I got out. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was in the Army for 4 years, and I actually worked on the border of Czechoslovakia back in 1984. When it was kind of a weird, first of all, it is nothing compared to what soldiers have to deal with now. I mean, it was so safe when I was in. It was ridiculously easy. But I did work on the border of Czechoslovakia before the Berlin Wall came down. So there was still communist, Czechoslovakia and East Germany and the whole thing. And so we would work those borders out in the middle of nowhere. Not border crossings, but, you'd be in a Jeep, 100 yards from the border, which is just border stones. That warned you that you were on the border, and so we would be out there all night, with binoculars and night vision goggles and radar equipment, looking to see if there's any activity. That's the kind of thing we did I did that for a few years, And then I got out, and I went and I begged for my job back at the Holiday Inn, and I went back and did the same old thing again for the same pay.
Oh wow!
4 years later, they never changed the pay scale. It was still like $50 a night. Guaranteed, which when you're in high school, that's great. But when you're, when you're out of the Army and you're like 22 years old, they're like, $50 a gig is not for 5 hours a night, for 5 sets. That's $10 a set,
Right.
And then I joined. So then I joined. Long story short, when there was a band in town called His Boy Elroy, they asked me to join, and I joined that band, and that's where songwriters started taking shape. And I wasn't the lead singer; I was just the guitar player, backup singer. And then I started getting some gumption and wanted to play my own songs. And then I got my brother to join me. He played bass, and we formed a band called Johnny with an I. And then Johnny with an I started, getting a pretty big following. And there was another band in town called Water for the Pool, and they had all of the best gigs, the weekend gigs, and they made all the money. And we were super jealous of them. But I thought, well, we should combine our bands, because at this point I had, 12 really solid songs. And I went to a couple members of Water for the Pool and said, look, let's form kind of a super group out of the two of us, because we have the most people, the biggest following. And we did that. And they ended up saying okay, and then that's when we formed the Verve Pipe in 1992.
Oh wow. Okay, so it was like a combination between the two bands. Wow.
Yeah, two cover bands, really. I mean, we played mostly covers. We played our original stuff too, but we played mostly covers. And they would pack houses. We started packing houses because we played the 25-cent draft beer nights on Tuesday nights or whatever,
Yeah.
for no money, but we got a huge following. And so that was what we thought, well, we've got thousands of people, that are following both our bands. Let's form the new band. We formed the Verve Pipe. We put an album out right away. We sold like almost 30,000 copies, I think, of that independent record.
Whoa.
And then a year later, we took some of that money and made another album, and then we sold about 30, 40, 50,000 of that. So that got the attention of RCA, and that's when they signed us in 94, I think.
Whoa. Yeah. Well, okay. So with Johnny with an I and Water for the Pool, you weren't the singer-songwriter for Johnny for an I, were you? Or were you?
Yeah, Johnny with an I. Yeah, that was my band. So I was the
okay.
singer-songwriter. I was the lead guy in that. His Boy Elroy, the first band, was the band that I just joined to play electric guitar. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I was trying to follow because I got confused. I'm wondering, like, how did you convince them? Like, hey, I know I'm the guitar player of this band. How like I'm going to start writing all these songs, and we should start a super group. But that makes sense if you're writing for Johnny with an I.
Right.
Did you have all new material when you formed Verve Pipe, or did some of those other songs? No,
the Johnny with an I songs. Our first Verve Pipe record was actually a Johnny with an I record.
Oh.
So we had all these songs. I think I ended up having 5 or 6 of my own songs on that record. And then the two guys that came in from Water for the Pool had a few songs. So, I just had that drummer play over my old drummer. And it really sounds cutthroat and rude, the way that we put it together. But we kind of knew, I mean, if we're talking about the business of music, like, this seemed like a really solid business move, because we had the best players, we had the most songwriters, we had guys that could sing. The lead singer of Water for the Pool was coming over, who happened to be a great drummer. So, it just made a lot of sense. So we do 4-part harmonies and stuff. I mean, we were really a great band in the early days. I mean, that, and that was because we had a bit of a cutthroat decision to say, hey, you guys, you're not going to make this new band, and, we're going to try to make it in the business. And then, a couple of years later, here we are, on MTV. It's nice.
Right.
It worked out right. I mean, really, I don't think anybody could fault us,
Sure.
I mean, I kind of knew what it, I felt like, we had a real shot at it, especially a band from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Where nothing's going on. We weren't from Seattle, like we didn't have, we weren't from Chicago, and we weren't even from the cool part of Michigan, which is Detroit. We were from Grand Rapids, and so for us to have to be able to actually make it and not only get signed but actually have a successful album, that was a huge deal in Grand Rapids for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that first record you guys released, was that I've Suffered a Head Injury, or was it something before that?
Yeah, that was the one. That was the Johnny with an I album. Yeah, that was the first album the Verve Pipe put out. Yeah.
Wow.
That was
And
I
then
suffered a head injury. And then Pop Smear was the
first record.
The real first record that was just Verve Pipe, like where we sat down and wrote songs together and the whole thing. And that's why that album's a little schizophrenic.
Mhm.
It's all over the map. There's a punk song, there's a acoustic song. I mean, it's crazy all over the map. But and how we got signed on the basis of that, I don't even think we got signed on the basis of that album. I think we got signed because we sold 70,000 records on our own.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that was probably a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a big deal now, even if you were signed.
Yeah, true. I mean, to sell 10 records is a big deal now. What are you talking about? I got 4,000 CDs in my freaking basement. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay. So with that first EP, you had you even had an acoustic version of the Freshmen on that first EP.
Yeah, I'd written that song when I was in Johnny with an Eye. That was the Johnny with an Eye song.
Oh my gosh.
I wrote that song in 1990, and and then when we signed, that was on the first EP. That's probably why we sold so many of those records, because I remember I was doing the Walk of Shame one time, going through the MSU campus, Michigan State University campus, one morning at 10 a.m. All these students are like little robots going to their classes, and here I am in my leather pants, and no shirt on at 10 a.m. And I heard it coming out of somebody's dorm room. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I heard the Freshmen for the first time. I thought, well, this might be something, and so yeah, that original version was acoustic. And then when we signed with RCA, they said, well, that's the song that everybody's singing along to at the shows. We wonder if you guys would be okay if you redid it and made it more rock and roll, more grunge sounding, modern rock, and so we did that. That's what we ended up doing. We stripped it off that first album, and so you can buy that album now, but it doesn't have the Freshmen on it. In fact, I think version of the Freshmen, you can get that version of the Freshmen on eBay for $200 or something, because there's, there were 30,000 sold, so there's a few out there.
Yeah, wow. 30,000? So 30,000 just of the first EP went out.
Yeah, the very first one, yeah.
Did you, how did that, I'm trying to, picture this. So as an independent band, how did you get, were you selling them, were you touring on the record? Is that kind of how you were able to get it out?
Played all the time. I mean, we hardly ever left Michigan. We played all the time. We would go to Atlanta because we knew people down there, and they could get us in a club and that kind of thing. But we sold a ton of them at the shows. And then we ended up selling, out a huge theater in Michigan, and we sold a ton of them then, I mean, it was just, I just remember we were always out of CDs. We kept ordering CDs. And then I think by the time we signed to RCA, I think that's when, by that time we had sold 30,000. I think that's probably correct. Yeah.
Jeez. But
so after a couple of years selling 30,000. Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
But that was a different time. I mean, that was such a different, everybody was buying CDs then. I mean, that's how you got your music,
Right.
So CDs were so popular, and local bands. There was so much support for local bands back then, especially in Michigan. There was a huge, it all started with the Seattle thing, just supporting your local scene, and so it was easy to sell records, much easier than it is now. Like I said,
it is now. Mm-hmm. But Pop Smear was written and released independently still, right? You hadn't signed with RCA?
No, that was the second one. Yeah, we immediately went in. We won this big world competition we didn't win the world. We came in third place in the world competition called Yamaha Soundcheck. So, we went up against the locals, and then we went up against regional, and then we did the nationals, and then we flew to Japan. And
wow.
And that was only the band only together. Yeah, the band had been together a year. That's how we met our manager. The manager's been my manager now for almost 30 years. He was one of the judges. And anyway, so we went and did that. We lost. I think we might have come in second place, but
Do you remember who
anyway,
won?
we lost the competition. Yeah, it was a Japanese duo. It was such a homegrown judge situation. It was ridiculous. They sang to a reel-to-reel tape. I remember that. Like he went over and pushed play, and then they sang. It was awful. They were good singers, but it was just awful. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if you're like, and then the band that beat us was, Oasis or something like that.
We've done fine. No. That would be different. But you know what? We've done fine since the Yamaha sound check. I'm not. But another funny thing about that, a quick funny story about that is that one of the grand prizes was like $50,000 and a new car, and the car didn't even meet American specs. It was like this little Japanese, this tiny Japanese little car. I was like, oh my God, I could never fit in that thing.
Yeah, how are you going to tour around in that?
Yeah. So anyway, but the point is, I think we won like $25,000, and we took that money and we made Pop Smear. So I do remember that, the order of things there. So that helped us, fund Pop Smear. Anyway.
So you funded Pop Smear, and then that's what grabbed the attention of RCA, you think?
Yeah, I think selling the records mostly. I mean, we had 6 or 7 labels come out and pass on us, including RCA. They passed the first time. And then finally somebody came in and was like, I get it. And he ended up being our A&R guy, great guy. And he was like, I get what's going on here, and I see why this is happening. And do you have any new stuff? And we had a bunch of demos we'd made in Milwaukee and gave them to him, and he loved the demos. And, our song Photograph was on there. And Cup of Tea, I think, was on there. So these other songs that made the Villains album. And he said, yeah, you've got it going on. We'll sign you. And then they signed us to a 4-album deal, I think. That's what it was, yeah.
Wow. And then Villains was the first real release from RCA then, right?
That was the first. Yeah. That was a major label debut. Yep.
Okay. And tell me about signing that contract and stuff. Was that mind blowing for you guys?
The actual ceremony of signing the contract was not. It's not like people think, where you all get together and you're smoking cigars and the whole thing. It was just kind of weird.
But just having
weird
that
backroom
contract.
thing. Yeah, having the contract was amazing, I mean, we had a bidding war there was a bidding war with RCA and Lava, which was Atlantic, I think, records.
I remember Lava.
So we got
records.
Remember that? We got a really good deal. Which, you look at it now and you go, well, what was a really good deal back then? I think we got 10 points or 11 points on the record, which I heard was a huge deal. When you think about that, it's like 10%, and then you divide that between 5 people. It wasn't really that great of a deal.
Yeah, but it looks like a lot. Yeah, still though.
It looks like a lot. I mean, first of all, when back then when you're a local band, you gauge the how good the deal is by how many records they sign you for, which is ridiculous. Like if you're signed to Warner Brothers, there was a band called Thought Industry that was from Kalamazoo, Michigan, right around here, and they got signed to Warner Brothers for 7 albums. You're like, oh my God, what an amazing deal! But they were stuck for 7 albums.
Yeah,
it was awful. Like I remember they would sell like 100,000 in Japan, and then they wouldn't sell anything anywhere else, and they still had to make these records, and so the label kept holding on to them. And so they were with that. I think they were with Warner Brothers for 10 years or something, 7 albums. So that's how you gauge how good the deal was back then.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway.
So you put out Villains, and then Photograph is the first hit from the record, right? Or the first single they pushed?
Yeah, that went to number 5 or 6, I think. So it did pretty well. That did pretty well. MTV played the heck out of that video. I
was going to say, was that the first video you ever shot?
Yeah, first video we ever shot. Yeah.
Was that kind of cool?
Yeah, that was a big deal. That was amazing. It was Lawrence Carroll, who was Sam Baer's artistic director. Sam Baer, of course, did Smells Like Teen Spirit and all these other great videos. So, and Lawrence was the artistic director. And so, yeah, that was an amazing. And then he became a great friend. He ended up doing a video for us 4 years ago, and he did it for free. I paid the cameraman and everything, but yeah, it's a song called Overboard. And then I don't know if you know this, but he recently passed out of the blue.
I didn't know that.
He passed away. Yeah, it was like 6 months ago he passed. I think he had a heart attack or something. But anyway,
that's terrible.
I'm all over the map today. Sorry, man. I've had like 6 cups of coffee today.
Ah, dude, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm just, I'm going all over the map. So feel free to edit this any way you want to. For sure.
I love it. Okay, so do you guys remember seeing like the video on MTV the first time? Like,
yes, I do. We were in a hotel room. I forget where we were, but we saw it there in a shitty hotel room. But what I remember is my buddy was back in Michigan, and there was a place in Lansing called the Small Planet, and that was where a lot of local bands hung out. And the band stopped playing, and they turned the TVs on the whole thing, and everybody in the club watched it. And he said everybody's jaw was on the floor, which was really nice. That was a nice feeling. Like people just couldn't believe it. And some of them were probably incredulous too, because I know how bands are. They're like,
oh, right,
guys, they're not that great.
We're better,
And then it was an amazing video though. And the photograph video is beautiful. So I'm sure that that was the nice thing I remember about it, was like having your peers actually, like something is always a big deal. And a lot of those guys. I'm getting sidetracked again, but I lived in a storage unit during the writing of Villains.
Oh, wow.
And my girlfriend kicked me out of our apartment for what could have been a number of very good reasons. So the band had a storage unit for 100 hours a month. So I'm like, well, I'm not gonna go live with anybody in the band. I'm gonna live in the storage unit because it had all my gear there and it was powered and I could write demos and the whole thing. So I lived there for 2 or 3 months. Anyway, and there were a dozen bands out there that had storage units that would rehearse out there. So you could walk through the storage facility compound and you'd hear a rock band playing here in this storage unit. And then you go to this other rock band playing over there, and there'd be a jazz band playing over there. It's like this crazy group of artists in this storage unit compound.
It's funny.
And
I
so
wonder
that's
if
what I
the
mean by the
storage
local
unit
band
knew
situation.
that you're doing it, or if they
I don't
cared.
think they did. I don't think they ever did. Maybe they didn't care. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, like I think, like now that's like I've never heard of any other place doing that. I think it's a brilliant idea. Bands should rent out a storage unit and then rehearse in there, and make sure they're powered, and then you play and rehearse, and you're in the middle of field somewhere in the storage unit. It's great. Lock up your equipment, but I just happen to live there. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
But I wrote some of my best songs in that thing. I mean, that I was Left Alone. I wrote Cup of Tea in there. I wrote Villains in there. Reverend Girl, I think I wrote in there. So Veneer, I know I wrote Veneer in there. So all these other songs on that debut album were written in that storage unit.
Wow. Did you like? So that record has Freshmen on it. Was that
right.
Did they know that you had that song? Like, did RCA know about that song? And did they want you to put it on this record? Because you didn't put it on.
Oh, yeah. They stripped it because they stripped it off the first album. That's, the intention was when they signed us that we'd strip it off that very first debut album and then we would re-record it.
Got you. Okay. So they were aware. They knew it was a hit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think he knew. I think our guy knew it was a hit because he came to a couple shows, and like the whole crowd knew the song already. The whole crowd sang along to it for the 2 shows he came to in Michigan. So I think he knew something was up with that song. He just wanted to get a recording of it that was going to work on radio,
right?
Modern rock radio. Everything was kind of grungy then.
And
so the Toadies were big, and the big Cumbersome was out. So everything was kind of dirgy and big guitar and everything. I think that's what they were going for. Well, we re-recorded it twice. We re-recorded it with Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads, who produced Villains record, and that version was super sleepy. And it was like 6 minutes long. It was a terrible version that radio wasn't going to play, and so then we had to redo it again. With Jack Joseph Puig, and then and that was after Photograph was released, so we had already sold a couple 100,000 copies of the other version, and then we re-recorded it, and then they stripped it on all the new pressings, and so when it was a hit on MTV and then it became a hit on radio, we had a lot of people complain when they bought the record. They'd say, this isn't the version that I heard on MTV, because they ended up getting one of the old ones. It was a huge mess. No, and then the old school fans hate, the ones that like the acoustic version that we first did, hate every version after that one. So I still get hate mail from people that are like, you should have re-recorded this. You should have kept it there. Yeah, why would you re-record it so bad? It's so much better back then in 90 when it's like, whatever.
So
anyway,
there really are there's 3 versions of that song out there.
3 versions out there. Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, well, with the success of that song, so that song just goes nuts on radio and on an MTV and stuff. Like, were you guys torn? Because I know you're saying that with the first EP, I don't know about the first record, you guys were just kind of playing really around the Michigan area. Like when you put out that the Villains record, did RCA put you on like a big tour?
Oh yeah, we went out with Kiss. We went out with Kiss.
My gosh.
The first. Yeah, I mean, when you hear, Gene Simmons heard an advanced copy of Villains and loved it, and he said, "You guys come out and tour Kiss," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" I was a huge Kiss fan when I was a kid, and I thought this is going to be great. It's going to be spectacular, and it sucked. I mean, it was terrible tour. Terrible.
Was it?
Oh my God, it was terrible. I mean, it was. We were cramming 5 guys into a hotel room and playing to empty clubs at that point. So in that respect, it was great because now we're on a stadium stage. We've got a tour bus, catered food, and all that stuff. I mean, that aspect. But stepping foot on stage in front of 20,000 Kiss fans who haven't seen Kiss with the original members and the makeup and the spectacle in 10, 15 years, and then you're the first thing that comes out on stage. Oh my God, do the math. I mean,
I didn't think about it that way.
30 minutes of booing and getting spit on and shit thrown at us. It was awful.
Oh
it was an
God.
awful tour. And we did that for 30 days. I mean, we were gluttons. I mean, we kept at it. And we were just like, well, we're not going to let this get us down. And now I'll never fear another crowd again for sure. I mean,
right.
When you face, and all the Kiss fans, they dress up like members of Kiss. So you look out in the audience and there's 20,000, Gene Simmons flipping you off and spitting on you. Well, what crowd are you going to fear after that? I mean, that was like the worst.
Jeez.
So yeah, that tour sucked. That was our big tour. And then, but fortunately, Photograph did really well, and then the Freshmen came out after that. So then we had our own tour. We could pick our opening bands, and that's when things were really good.
Mm-hmm. So that's when after. Yeah, tell me about the first tour that you guys got to do. That was like a headlining tour like that.
Yeah, Tonic was with us. They were good friends,
oh, cool.
And they. And Case Choice, I don't know if you remember that band. It was a great band.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 3 of us went out, and I think we played about a year and a half straight with those guys, and that was a really fun tour. I mean, that was the big tour for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The tour did really well.
What was the moment that you can kind of see the shift in like the success? Was that after you put out Photograph, or was there was there a moment where you're like, whoa, like you started seeing like these massive numbers and big crowds?
Oh, that was when the Freshmen was released. When K-Rock, everybody wanted K-Rock back then. I don't know what it's like now, but if K-Rock adds your record, then the whole country adds your record. And when they added it, and then everywhere you go, it's being played, 12 times a day, and then. You're getting recognized on the streets of New York and LA and all these other places where normally, I've been getting recognized in Grand Rapids before that, but this was like a whole new level. I mean, and then play Letterman, when you're playing Letterman and Leno and that kind of thing, those are the big moments.
Yeah.
But of course, that's when you go, wow, it doesn't get much bigger than this. This is worldwide, rock star.
Yeah. Do you remember?
But with that, you pay a heavy price. I mean, you pay the price of a big ego, and things aren't good enough for you.
Right. Yeah. Do you remember like the first time somebody was like stopped you or like asked you for an autograph, or like when that started kind of happening?
Yeah, that was during the heyday of the Verve Pipe, before or right when we got signed. Like
Mhm.
there were, like at that point, like we were pretty famous in Michigan.
Mhm. That's
You
cool.
know, I mean those times. I mean you don't really after once you sign with a label, then it's always a meet and greet. It's always record stores stop by, and then
Sure.
long lines and that kind of thing. And then that's where you start to go, oh, this is. I didn't realize it was going to be this. Signing autographs for 3 hours. When I was practicing my autograph in third grade. Suddenly I'm like there for 3 hours signing my autograph. Listen, there's worse jobs, I know.
Sure.
But
pretty cool,
the appeal of the signing an autograph, that abates
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. After 2 hours of signing, you're like, okay.
Yeah, all right. No. Can we just get a stamp?
Right.
That kind of
I bet. Well, think of now though. Everybody would be stopping you to take a picture. Yo, can I get a selfie? Can I? Yeah, I bet you still get that now, but it's weird.
I get
how
it
that
now,
is
but
now.
I get it. It's so funny, but with COVID now, it's like, the one of the good things and one of the bad things is that if I wear the mask and I wear a hat or whatever, or wear the mask and sunglasses, it's like, you realize like nobody recognizes me now. And I should be happy about that, because 3 years ago, I go to a club and people go, oh, because I'm also 6'5", so you can't really miss me. But, people recognize me and I'm just trying to have a drink or whatever. And I'm always friendly to people. I love people. I love the fans and the whole thing. That's not an issue.
Right.
But now, you put the mask on and the sunglasses and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool. But then the other day I went out and go, I'm like, I never get recognized.
Yeah,
But
you're
I'm
like,
wearing it.
aw.
I'm a little disappointed. Realized, So
Yeah,
anyway.
that's funny. And then the next record you guys put out was the self-titled album.
Huge failure. Yeah, huge failure.
It was a huge failure.
Oh, that was the album that really smacked us right back down to where we belonged. Like I said, you get a huge ego. You're selling millions of records, and then you decide to make an album, and you put it this way. At one point, we wanted to fly Kate Bush in from England just to sing a background part. I mean, it's just like the album cost over $1 million to make in New York City.
Wow.
It was a Hit Factory at $4,000 a day, and it was just so over the top, behind the music stuff, MC Hammer House, that kind of thing. That and then the album comes out. And the expectation is that you're going to sell 1 million records, and you sell 7,000 in the first week, and you go, "Oh my God, this is awful." And then I think the total we sold that album is probably 20,000, 25,000. And then RCA, they just stopped making them. Nobody was buying that record, so that was a huge failure. Huge. It was good for us, but it was a huge failure.
Yeah, was there like a milestone from the album that you like, a highlight from it, or is it just kind of like something you're like, eh?
A musical highlight? Are you talking about?
Yeah, or like a highlight within the record. Like, was there a moment like a highlight from that era?
I think that album. I think the songs of that album are fantastic. I love the songs. I actually like the sound of the record too. It was the wrong record to make, and it cost too much money, and there was no way RCA would put any more money into it to promote it. And that's a fan favorite record, though. They loved it. They call it the Frog album because there's a dissected frog on it.
Yeah, the frog's on the cover, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and but we, I always felt like it was our Pinkerton. That was one of those albums where you first listen to it and you go, "What? What is this?" The Weezer album I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite Weezer one.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah, some people are like the Blue album.
So many people come up. So many people come up to us and talk about that Frog record. They love that record, and nobody bought that record.
That's cool. So it obviously resonated with the real true fans of the Verve Pipe, at least.
Yeah, but you can't even get that record. We have to go on eBay and buy copies of that album so we can sell them at our live show.
Oh, really? Oh, so you're able to still, you have to track it down? Oh, man.
Yeah, because RCA stopped making them. So we got to, we can get on there and find, copies of that for 99 cents. So that's a great day for me if I find 10 of those and I buy 10 of those records for $10 and then sell them, sign them and sell them for $10,
Right. Yeah.
But that's how ridiculous it is now out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And the next record was Underneath.
Yeah, Underneath was that was the one for us. That was the best.
That was the best. Tell me about that record.
I mean, we got Adam Schlesinger, who we're huge fans of, Fountains of Wayne. Loved him. And he passed, right?
It's so unfortunate. I mean, through the
COVID,
right? Yeah, that's so sad.
So sad. First guy I knew who died of COVID.
Yeah, it's awful.
So yeah, unfortunately, but he's super talented, and we made an inexpensive record in Chicago. It had Colorful on it, which is in Rockstar.
Oh yeah, the movie.
Yeah, and then
the one with McConaughey or Mark Wahlberg.
No, Rockstar. Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg lip syncs to Colorful at the end of the movie. I mean, that was a huge moment. So all of these great things were happening with that record already. And we had a song that was number 20 with a bullet called Never Let You Down. I mean, it was like a huge comeback record for us. Huge. I mean, we were strapped in and like, we've done it. This is, every song in here is great, catchy, fun. And, and we knew fans loved it because I teased them with demos and all that kind of stuff. And then, we got our release date, and back then you're like, all right, it's in the fall, so that's great. Kids are going back to school. It's a good time to, sell music. And then Christmas retail is around the corner, and you look at the date now and you go, it was September 11. I mean, that's, what do you do? Nobody could promote anything. I mean, it just, nobody bought the record. Nobody went and saw Rockstar in the theater, and so it was just another huge failure, bad timing, But what do you do?
Yeah, how could you ever predict something like that? Wow.
So just bad timing, and then that was our destiny. I think at that point it was just that's when you got to go. Well, I don't know. At that point, RCA was like, well, we've got another album we could make, but we're just going to drop you guys, and they let us go. And so we made three albums for them.
You put out the hit, the platinum record, right? Yeah,
that doesn't count as a fourth, though. I don't think that doesn't count as a fourth for the deal. I think we had a 4-album deal and a greatest hits, but
that you just at that point
greatest hits albums for us is pretty suspicious anyway. I mean, we had I think 4 songs total that actually charted. I mean, so and there's like 14 songs on that album. So I always laugh at that,
Well, there was some time in between Underneath and Overboard. Overboard was the next record.
Yeah, that came out in 2014. We did a couple of kids records for fun to get back in the studio and just enjoy each other again. So, we did some silly lyrics and made the rock and roll kids albums. Yeah. Family album was the
family album. Yeah. Tell me about that. Was that when you had your kids and you were like, hey, let's do this for
pretty
them?
much. I mean, I went, I remember going to any kind of kids performance with my kids. And then if I bought one t-shirt, I'd have to buy 3 t-shirts, and I thought, well, this is a pretty good way to, this is a pretty good thing for us. If we did a kids album, then our merchandise sales it'll help our merchandise sales, and it did.
Definitely.
I mean, exponentially. We sold, our merchandise sales tripled. And then Sirius XM Kids Plays Live played the hell out of that record. And,
oh, really?
And suddenly we were, playing in front of, 10,000 screaming kids in Central Park, playing.
I was going to ask, so you toured and played these songs.
Oh, yeah, we toured. We wouldn't play the Freshmen. When we played the kids' shows, we played kids' songs. So that was confusing to people. We always find a way to confuse people and get people angry at us. I mean, we played Lollapalooza, but we played the kids' stage, and, we played Austin City Limits. And I remember they didn't say it was a kids' show, so, 5,000 grown-ups show up at our stage to hear the Verve Pipe and hear the Freshmen, and then there's 5,000 kids trying to get to the front, and it's like this stupid mixture of, and we had to tell the crowd, we're not playing the freshmen, we're playing kids, part the waves, let the kids come up front, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then you hear boos and people are booing us and all this stuff. It was like I said, I never fear another crowd after Kiss, so I don't give a shit.
Right.
And we just laugh at them because we're having a blast. We're playing for these kids, and I'm pouring cereal out of my guitar on my face and all this stupid stuff we did.
That's cool.
We always had the most fun. We have the most fun at the kid shows, but they were so exhausting, these kid shows, that we had to stop doing them. I stopped doing them in 2014. I'm like, that's it. We're done with the kid shows. And
you put out 2 family albums, though, right?
We did. We put out 2 kids records out, and they both did really well for us. They still sell we sell more merchandise with the kid stuff than anything, for sure.
Wow.
There's no competition. I mean, it's mostly kid stuff, but I just won't play the kid shows live anymore because you got to be on for an hour. I mean, you got to be on. Like if you play a Verve Pipe show, we can play 2 hours of Verve Pipe shows, which we normally do because we'll play. And by the way, we don't make people wait 2 hours to hear the Freshmen. We usually play the Freshmen 45 minutes in. So if they want to leave, they can leave. But we have fans that love these long shows. But anyway, I can play a 2-hour show with the Verve Pipe adult music, no problem, because you got some mellow stuff and the whole thing. But a kid's show, I got to be on for an hour straight, jumping around, acting stupid, or kids get bored and the parents get mad, and And so I was like, after every show, I was exhausted, and then we'd go and play a rock show that night. So it was just too much. So
so you're doing like the kid matinee show and then a night show. Wow.
Which is hilarious because you'd play a club, like you'd play a really shitty club, and there'd be like cigarette burns on the stage and everything. But you'd be playing at 1 PM for the kids. And then I would pour this, like I said, we had a song called Cereal, so I'd fill my acoustic guitar with Fruity Pebbles, right? Family size box, 2 family size boxes loaded. And then like at the end of the show, like the thing weighs like 100 pounds, my guitar. And nobody knows it's in there. And at the end of the show, we play cereal, and then I pour that cereal all over me. And the kids come up and they eat that disgusting cereal off the stages with the cigarette burns and everything. I mean, it seriously was. It's such a. Oh man, I don't know. It's such a funny thing. I think about it now, and I almost think, man, I'd like to do that again. But no, the more I think about it, no, I don't want to ever do that again. It's too much.
That's so cool, though. Wow, what a cool thing to do. Play for the kids, and then you got your show later the night with the adults.
I mean, it's just music. That's the thing. Like, what people don't understand, people take it so seriously. It's like we're doing 4-part harmonies in the kids shows, big rock guitars. I mean, we play a cover of a Queen song. We'll play a cover. We're introducing these. We played Godzilla, and we called it Griffzilla because we had a guy plays harmonica in our band called Griff, and we dress him up in this giant Godzilla costume, and we would play Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult. We'd say Griffzilla instead, and it was the stupidest thing. But the parents would love it. The parents would get the jokes. Another joke we do, oh man, this got me in trouble. I think I might have only done this once because I got so much flack for it. I'd say something on the mic like, "Oh, you mother fathers, better get over there and buy our CD," or something like that. Oh my God. And I don't know, this stuff like that just cracked me up, but
that's hilarious.
I can never do that again. Get out there, how all you mother fathers do, and parents would be like, "Oh, thank God."
Thank God. That's so hilarious. So from the kids record, is that when you started doing putting out your solo albums?
Oh no, I put out the first solo album. The songs that didn't make Underneath, because it was very competitive songwriting in our band. And the songs that didn't make Underneath, I said, well, I'll just put out a solo album, an acoustic solo album. And so I put a solo album out, and then I made another one. And that's typically what it would be. It would be songs that wouldn't make the cut for the Verve Pipe stuff. I'd put on a solo record, and then when we started making kids records, it was like, well, I still want to make my own stuff. And so that's why I made the solo albums. So.
Would you tour on those by yourself or anything, or?
Yeah, just me and a guitar.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I mean, in 2007, I needed money for an album because I wanted to work with this great producer, Bill Simsick, who produced all the Eagles records.
Oh, wow.
And it was going to cost some money to use his people like Willie Weeks and, Joe Vitale. These are guys that played on Life's Been Good with Joe Walsh. I mean, these are like the best players, and I wanted to work with these guys. So I went out to raise money, and I did house concerts, called it the Lawn Chairs and Living Rooms Tour. And nobody really knew then. This is 2007, so it was kind of like, what are you going to come into my home and play, and that kind of thing? And they said, yeah, we'll just cut the middleman. And I'd go, but I'd play like 4 or 5 shows on the weekend. I mean, I'd go from one to the next, and made all this money. That I made so much money that I ended up the next year, even though I wasn't raising money for anything, I was like, I'm going to do this. I played over 100 shows in the summer, and I just retired it last year. For 14 or 13 years, I did that. And then, again, it was like one of these things where I'm like, I just can't keep that schedule up. So, but yeah, that was my $1 million. That ended up being my $1 million idea over time. I mean, that Lawn Chairs Living Rooms tour made me a lot of money. I mean, it was great. So and I would never charge a lot either. I just
you would just play in people's houses and stuff. Like, tell me a little bit more about this.
Well, I started when I had a woman write me, and she said, "Hey, I wonder if you come play my birthday party." And we couldn't even pay the mortgage at that point. This is 2007 because we bought a house during the crisis.
Oh yeah, the
housing crisis.
Yeah.
And she just said, "Come play my birthday party." And I was like, kind of a rock star. I'm like, "I'll play your birthday party," or something stupid like that. Yeah. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. Like, what is this?
Of course, yeah. What is?
And then
this?
she says, she's like, she comes back, she writes me back. She goes, "I paid $2,500." I'm like, "What time is that party? I'll be right over." And I went over and I played, and she had like 50 folding chairs for family and friends, and like, it was like in front of her fireplace, a beautiful house, and like family photos on the walls, and fresh flowers in the vases. It was like the greatest, not club ever. It was just a beautiful place to play in front of 50 people that love you and want you to play your own music. And so I did that, and then I was driving home that night, and I had a check for $2,500 in my pocket, and $500 in cash from merchandise sales. And I'm driving home, and I'm like, I got 4,000 people on my mailing list, and they all have birthdays. That's $10 million. I was like, oh my God. But I had to lower my expectation. I sent the letter out the next day, an email. I just said, look, book me in your home. I'll come, cut out the middleman kind of thing. And I'll accept I'll consider any offer. Some people want to pay $100, other people pay a couple thousand,
Yeah.
And I sent the email, and I booked like 52 shows in 24 hours. And then the next year, like I said, I booked over 100 shows. So and then the next year it was the same thing. I limited, I think, 100 shows a year up until the end, when I decided I just can't do it anymore. Too many Verve Pipe shows,
Yeah. Wow.
So that's how I got through that whole solo thing.
Or it was like, there
were some weird ones. Yeah. There were some weird ones because you show up, you don't know the people, you knock on the door. I mean, repeat customers, but new customers, you only go back and forth through email.
Mm-hmm.
You show up and knock on the door, and somebody's like, "Hey, we're going to go out on the speedboat today. You're playing the speedboat to 6 people." You go, "Oh, wow, okay." And then you go on the speedboat in the middle of Possum Kingdom Lake, and in Texas, and you're playing to 5 people in a speedboat, but it's cool. I mean, they love your music, and they, it's just like they're an audience that pays attention and cares about you, unlike playing at a club where you got to deal with a surly sound man or other bullshit.
Right.
These were nice. Everyone was great. I can't think of any that were bad. I mean, the only ones that were bad were, playing for rich people is never really that fun. They don't understand. Like, you become background music and
there's
that kind of thing. But then you
chatting amongst themselves.
I just went book with those the next year.
Mm-hmm. Was there any like a situation where you got it? Yeah. Like, did you have to we'd pull up and you're like, "Oh, this is kind of sketchy." Like, was that ever?
Oh, sure. No, I'd always check in with my wife. I'd always check in with my wife and go, "All right, this is kind of sketchy. And if you don't hear from me within 2 hours," because it was a strict 2-hour experience. Like, I would show up exactly on time. I'd mingle for a half hour and talk to people, whatever, hang out a little bit, and then I would play for an hour, and then I'd mingle and sell merchandise for a half hour, and then I was out of there because I typically had to get to the next show. Like I
Right.
gave myself just enough time to drive to another show.
Wow.
And so, you know, yeah, there were plenty of times I would pull up and go, oh man, I don't know if this is going to be good or bad, but they always end up being great.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Like
That's
I
a
said,
cool
the poor
concept.
people really appreciate music. Like when
Uh-huh.
you come into their home, like if they're spending money of, you know, the money of a small appliance or something on you, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you're in their home and you're playing music for them, they're very appreciative. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, rich people can write you a check for 5-10 grand and it's like no big deal. But when
Yeah.
somebody writes you a check for 1,000 and you're in there, like they make a big deal out of it, and they have, you know, potluck. People bring dinners, you know, people bring dishes to pass around. That it's really nice. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's a
You know.
great idea. I mean, because even people could get little, yeah, their crew, their neighborhood around, and even if they charge people
Yeah.
like $5 to come in just to pay you, that's still, I
Yeah,
mean,
well, we found out a way to do it in the second, third year, I think it was. We finally figured it out, that we could get everybody's. You know, you can't charge and then have alcohol.
mm-hmm.
You know, that's illegal for homeowners, but they can take donations. So it's just donations at the door, and then they donate, you know, to pay for me, and then the
Mm-hmm.
host ends up with a little bit extra money or whatever to pay for the food and the whole thing. I mean, it's usually a break-even situation.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we
I didn't
would give them
realize you
all
can't.
these tips.
I didn't realize you can't sell. Oh, but that makes sense because it would be like a bar, I
Yeah,
guess, right?
yeah. So, but we would give all of these. We'd give all the hosts tips. You know, we'd say, well, here's what you should do. Do it like this, and you can actually get all your money back, and you're just hosting it. So, you know, and also, you know, we would, let's say I would play in St. Louis. I'd book a show in St. Louis, and somebody from St. Louis would write me, and they'd say, hey, you know, I want to get you down here. I'd say, okay, well, that's going to be, let's say it's going to be $3,000 to get me to go down to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
But we say, but look, if we can book a couple more shows down in St. Louis, because I'm already down there, your price will come down. We would do that too. So
That's
then I'd
cool.
go and book 2 other shows. Now, yes, I have to play 3 shows as opposed to 1, but I'm in front of more people and they're only paying 1,000, and chances are they're going to be repeat customers and have me back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Smart
but we would
business
put all
move.
these tips out there. We would put all those, you know, we'd give them all these tips and say, this is the way you should do it. And it was a smart business move because in the end, I was never short of getting those gigs. I mean,
Mhm.
I was always going back. I'd have to turn gigs down. I sold a ton of merchandise, mailing list grew. I mean, there was no better way to do it.
Mm-hmm. And you did that up
And
until
then,
what, last year, you said?
yeah, last year I did my last lawn chair show.
Wow. Jeez. And then, so you were doing that all while still doing stuff with the Verve Pipe? It was just kind of like a side gig?
Yeah, well, Verve Pipe was still doing the kids thing. We weren't doing, you know, and not until 2014 did we do
Another record.
Overboard. Yeah. So then we did Overboard. Once we started, you know, I had different players in the Verve Pipe at that point, and so once that happened, it was like, well, let's make an album with this band, the new band, and then we did that, and then we did Parachute a few years later, and now we're pretty close to another album done. So
Really?
the concentration has been on that. So concentration now is on the Verve Pipe rock shows, and up until COVID happened, we were selling out shows again. I mean, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all over the U.S. And then, you know, and now we just canceled this April tour again. We rebooked it for July and had to cancel the whole tour again. So, you know, I mean,
Jeez.
now's the time to be creative, I guess.
Yeah, I did see that you guys had like like one of the, like a Zoom song that you put up on your Instagram and stuff.
Yeah, we do that kind of thing. We put up the new songs there. We do the Zoom videos, Zoom looking videos, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And writing, and we just, you know, the weird thing, we just finished another Christmas song, which is like always odd to do a Christmas song in July, but you know, so you know, we're constantly writing and working together, and we're going to go back in the studio within a couple weeks now that it's getting safe in Michigan again, and finish up this record. We got 6-7 songs in the can right now, and so
Wow. That's really
Always working. Yeah, always right.
That's awesome. So you did have a tour booked and everything, so that just totally threw a wrench in everything.
Yeah, the last 3 years, the last 4 years have been about reestablishing ourselves as a touring band, and things were great. Things were really going good, and then it happened. But like I said, look, it's happened to everybody. I mean,
right.
You got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure it out. I mean, I was able to figure it out with the lawn chair tour. Back when we couldn't pay the mortgage, we figured out the kids thing. I mean, there's always something. You got to keep thinking. You got to keep thinking, what can I offer that's different?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? You got to think outside the box. You got to pursue your passion.
Right.
And I do the speaking tour too, where I go around and speak to companies, and I talk about reinvention and that whole thing, and tell the story, and and that's another way to to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm. And then you did a song, or what's the song that you did with Jeff Daniels?
Oh yeah, no, Jeff and I have been writing together for years.
Really?
I think the first song we did was an album called Magazine. That was 2011, and then he wrote Overboard with me, the title track for the Verve Pipe record, and then in 2017.
I didn't realize that he's like a songwriter.
Yeah, he's terrific. He's more in the blues vein. He's a big blues fan, and but he's a great storyteller.
Wow.
And he's also a Michigan guy. That's how I've known him. And then he actually saw the documentary we made. A buddy of mine's a documentary filmmaker. He made a movie about lawn chairs and living rooms at house concert tour, and he followed me around for a weekend for 5 shows. And then Jeff saw the documentary and got a hold of me and said how much he liked it, and maybe we should write together. And then Jeff and I put an album out 2016 or 2017, a whole album together. So that was nice too. That was more of a singer-songwriter album.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I would have never guessed that he was a songwriter.
Super talented guy. No, he's super talented. He's a great guitarist and great storyteller.
Wow. That's so rad that you got to work with him, or you're buddies with him, man. Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Really just like another Michigan guy who just like puts his head down and does the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
very cool.
I like that.
So the new Verve stuff, you the Verve Pipe, you guys are in the studio. You said you got 6 songs like in the can, and you're going to be working on some more.
Yeah. Yep. That'll be and what we'll do is what we did with Parachute was we'll release a song a month, and at the end of the year, we'll put the album out, vinyl and CDs.
Rad.
But we did that with Parachute, and it was really successful for us because you keep people interested. You put a song out a month, and then you're engaging people that entire month. I mean, that's another really smart business move. That wasn't my idea; it was my manager's idea, and I said, "Well, that's a great idea," and that worked out really well because the people that that you were engaging with once a month about the new song, by the end of it, they all still buy the album, we found. So it worked out great. So we'll do that again. Instead of making people wait a year for an album, you put them out one at a time.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's cool. That's really cool. Do you have a plan on releasing the first song, or?
We did. Yeah, that should have happened a month ago, but
right.
It's like
COVID.
Well, we're trying to figure everything else out. That really isn't a good excuse, I guess. Now it's like getting the design, we've been pretty good about the graphic arts. I mean, we try to go all out for our stuff. So graphic artist is busy and everybody's like being creative now, and it's hard to get anybody to work for you. So, but I would say the first song should go out here in the next month or two for sure. Rad. Better.
What's the vibe and sound of the new songs?
I mean, it's rock and roll, but it's, I think we try to stay true to who we are, I mean, if people like Villains, they'll like the new stuff.
Cool.
I mean, our fans are our fans. They've been our fans for years. And the ones that really like us, I think, are the ones that like the lyric,
Oh yeah.
That like the stories and like it to mean something and do like the heavy guitars. So there's that, I mean, we don't, I'm sure every band says the same thing, but we don't really put out filler. We've got enough songwriters in this band that every song we give it to do, and I don't want to put anything out that we're not proud of. So we've got a good catalog of music. I think anybody that listens to the last album, Parachute, will find it to be very catchy and fun and cool and the whole thing.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And have you done any of the like live streaming stuff or?
Yeah, I've done it. I do it for my Patreon people. Do you know Patreon at all?
Yeah, I do.
Patreon.com. It's great. Yeah, it's great. So Patreon.com/Brian Vander Ark. And I do a once a month thing with those people and put up demos and stuff all the time. And
oh, cool. Have you been doing that for a while? Or was that?
No, just when this happened.
Oh, okay.
Just when this happened. Yeah, a couple months. I've been doing it for 3 months now. It's been great. Super fun. And, to interact with people that way. And so that's the streaming that I do. I don't do much of the streaming on Facebook or Instagram. I like to save it for the Patreon people.
That's cool. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear the new stuff. I've been a fan of your band for a very, very long time. I can still remember hearing the Freshmen for the first time. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And just being like, I hadn't heard anything like that before and just being blown away by it. So I can't wait to hear the new stuff. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I really.
I like having a good conversation. You're really good at this. This is a great conversation.
Thank you so much. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, do all your business in-house. Keep everything yourself. I mean, there's no reason why you can't make a living, just putting out your music on your own. You don't need to sign the big record deal. If they even exist, don't sign the 50-50 deals. Unless you've got a great manager and a great that you'll get the priority. You can do everything on your own now. They could take advantage of the, inexpensive recording equipment that you can get now. You can make pristine recordings at home. You don't need to go into a major studio to do that. So my advice is to write a lot because content is king, and to record things and sell things on your own and run your music like a business because it is a business.